Hello and welcome to the BNB show. My name is Brandon Kane right here. This guy over here to my side, that's going to be Seahawks. Brendan Nelson back in the house here at the Hawks Nest to help me preview and take a little bit of a look back at the last game here for our Hawks and just kind of take a tone, take a little bit of a pulse for where this team's currently sitting at and what's going on. It's great to have you in the house, Brendan. How you doing on this fine Thursday?
Better now. Better now, definitely.
Winning can help to remedy a lot of different bad feels, can it?
Yeah, especially a win like that over a team like that. Like there was a lot going on, and I mean, I think we just needed that one, not just for the win itself, but also to kind of alleviate the mental block that a lot of us, I think, had when it came to games like that against teams like that.
Yep, six straight games for the Niners. Haven't handled us pretty well since Shanahan's been there overall, and it did eventually here bring a little bit of a turning point between these two organizations in that recent run of dominance. From a big picture standpoint, though, obviously you feel good about coming out of this game, but any sort of specific takeaways coming out of this game as well?
I think the big one would probably be looking at this Seahawks defense. I think that if you're taking a look at the last two games, which they are the two games that have come after the adjustments that were made on defense after the Buffalo game, they seem like they've worked. We've got two full games now where the defense has been actually slightly above average, and the early down defense has actually been workable. It's been around league average. And you're looking at those things and you're thinking to yourself, okay, this is further evidence that we got the right guy at head coach. Because what I was saying in some of those games a month ago when the team really wasn't playing well defensively was, well, I understand he doesn't have the exact coach that he wants or the exact roster that he wants, but you coach what you have, not what you don't coach what you wish you had. And he's made adjustments to account for what he has, and it seems like it's worked. That was one of the worst offensive games that the Niners have had ever since Brock Purdy took over. So I think that's the number one takeaway for me. Not to say that I'm super down on the offense after this game, although they didn't play great, but I think that defense turned in a performance unlike any defensive performance we've seen against the Niners over the last 3-4 years. And I think that's the number one takeaway.
How much do you account of that being that the Niners were a little shorthanded with key guys out and being no Kittle, no Brandon Ayuk, or do you feel like it's a legitimate performance?
Well, in some of these previous games, it didn't really matter who we were playing. We were just playing bad. Like we let the Giants walk up and down the field on us over and over and over again. And that Giants team struggles to score more than 10 points a game in pretty much every game they played since that game.
Yeah,
So I can only attribute that to it so much because earlier in the season, it didn't matter who we were playing. It's in some of those games. Like the Patriots had good offensive success against the Seahawks in that game. So, yeah, we have been helped by the fact that our opponent was weakened. I'm sure some of the things that happened in that game don't happen if they have Kittle. They probably don't happen if they have Ayuk. Although they have done a phenomenal job replacing Ayuk with Jawan Jennings. He looks as good as Ayuk has ever looked, if we're being honest, these last several games. But at the same time, I still think it's a big step in the right direction for this defense.
I agree. I do think that you didn't went out there and take it. You took it from them at home, and they had some relatively good health in other places, and we've had our share of injuries on our side of it. So it is a little bit more tit for tat from my standpoint on this game and the outlook on that. Um, Offensive wise, we've got back in our two offensive linemen back in the ranks, and maybe we didn't get as much of a output as far as scoring return goes with those two guys, but based a little bit on what we saw from the field on them, to my eyes, and then obviously the matching PFF scores, which go together in my opinion of what we saw, both Oluwatimi and Abraham Lucas really came out and stabilized some things on that line from those positions, did they not?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Especially Lucas. I know Oluwatimi got a really good PFF grade, and I thought he played fine. I don't know if I thought he played as well as the grade indicated. But this is going to be an interesting last 7 games for him because it's going to take a lot to win me over because I don't want to do the thing where I kind of fall in love with a player because he plays okay. And then I think, okay, we're good here. And then we get to next year and then we find out, oh, he's just okay. And okay is not good enough. So it's going to be an interesting last 7 games for him. I would love to be able to go into the offseason saying, okay, we actually have center taken care of, which that's kind of what's at stake here. But I'm going to have a high standard there. I'm not going to just look at Oluwatimi being the 25th best center in the league and go, yeah, I'm ready to hitch my wagon to that for 2025. But maybe if he can take it up to 16th or 15th best center in the league, then I'm like, all right, we got enough things to worry about this offseason. If I can take center out, then I'm going to be pretty happy about that. So I'm definitely excited to see what he does the rest of the way. Same with Abe Lucas, who, there's just a difference in this offense with the way it goes. And we caught a break when Bosa went out, but I don't really care that much. Like we saw this offensive line play miserably against everybody. It didn't matter if it was Bosa or Aiden Hutchinson, or it was just some random guy on the Giants or some random guy on the Falcons. We couldn't stop them. In this game, Bosa goes out, everything changes. That is a big step in the right direction.
It is, and Lucas definitely held up well against Bosa throughout the game. It wasn't like, and that's first game back, rust you're trying to knock off, but going back and putting a video together of Lucas's snaps in this game that I'm hoping to get out today, and it just stood out that he was handling him all the way through. And then when you see him at the end of the game, when he's got a Leonard Floyd going up against him instead, it's like he's taking on a toddler at that point with the previous battle where they're kind of going back and forth, and it's he's hanging in there perfectly fine with Bosa, but then almost kind of dominating a bit with Leonard Floyd. I mean, just completely shutting him down on some reps where Floyd's almost giving up mid-rep, and you can feel him giving up mid-rep. And I think that he's going to be such a huge boon to this offensive line, Oluwatimi as well. And to your point on this, Brendan, I think even if he gets to middle of the road, part of my mantra is going to be take it past the line. As far as on the offensive line, no pun intended, meaning take it past that bare minimum state of things. And so I think that even if you get him to a 15th, you'd go prior years and you'd say, okay, he made us feel warm and fuzzy on the back end of the schedule. Now let's go make a Nick Harris signing for about $2 million, and we're good at center. And I think instead what you've got to do is probably find that extra quality guy that pushes Oluwatimi on this. Hopefully he can take the job at that point. It's probably more of a drafted guy than you signed guy then behind him, but go find a legitimate talent there to push him on that. And that'd be the place, even to me, if he gets that middle of the road state, I'd want them to do that. Would you be the same? Or if he does get to middle of the road, you feel comfortable enough to going with a value-based signing of a, aged vet? It's not going to cost a lot, but get you benchmark A of play.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. And my sense would be that at that point you'd have to say we got to take care of the things that we have to take care of, like left guard. Left guard is a must this offseason, I think, unless you really think Haynes is going to be able to handle that transition. And at this point, my confidence in that is low. So you got to take care of that. And then you got some other things you also have to take care of a little bit in terms of fixing the team for the 2025 season. But it's really not that bad anymore. You've kind of done a pretty good job of figuring out this linebacker thing, right? I don't feel like we're going into the offseason with some desperate need at linebacker anymore. You probably have to address nose tackle in some way because all of our nose tackles are about to be out the door. You might have to do a little something with safety, maybe, but you pretty quickly can loop back around to center. And the thing that I'm a little concerned about is I do think that this draft is pretty weak at center. There isn't a lot that I like. So I really would like to at least be able to go into this offseason thinking I don't have to get a center because I don't know if the center is going to be there. But I think the important part is that we need Oluwatimi to look good, not just okay or mediocre, for us to feel like we can roll forward with him. Because for some reason, the team didn't feel comfortable playing him until now when they literally have to. Like, again, there were reports that Jalen Sundell was out playing him. So I need to see a lot of evidence to contradict that.
Well, maybe Sundell's the guy that they just roll with in the next year as the backup, feeling like he's a real developmental guy. That's a bit of a question mark for us because we haven't had a chance to see a lot of him. Yeah. Maybe the team has a lot more confidence in him going through a full offseason there, potentially. Because you're right. We have heard reports that they definitely like those. They like Sundell quite a bit.
Yeah, and then there's Haynes. Haynes could move to center as well. We could try that. We
That's
talked
what I
about
would do.
yeah,
I think that's more of what I would do at this point. I
yeah. We
he was
talked
supposed
about
to be
these.
ready. He's supposed to be ready made, right? I mean,
Yeah,
isn't it hard? It's harder to get as much that place of saying, "Oh, the strength and power stuff will come," when he was an older product, was supposed to be ready made. I struggle to come up on that one going, well, that's going to come along, or feel confident that's going to come along at right guard.
yeah. I'm a little bit confused by that one right now. That one because I scouted him too, and I liked what I saw. I'm really surprised that he is apparently so lost that he can barely be active on game day. I can't figure it out. But the thing with the offensive line is you hit a lot of branches on your way down, right? You fail out at tackle, you can go to left guard. You fail out at left guard, you can go to right guard. You can go to center from there. You've got a lot of opportunities to get like a second chance or a third chance at succeeding in the NFL. And maybe that's what he needs. He just needs to find that right branch.
It's true. I'm fighting off allergies again today, folks. So bear with me today. This change of seasons just put me under. Well, another guy that stood out in this game on that offense, and it was an offensive day that you weren't real prodigious, but we've had some guys really sliding in and finding some fits as far as their roles. Brendan here, and guys that we've been waiting for to come forward the last 2 weeks. Jackson Smith and Jig has probably given you 2 of his best 3-4 games of his career here in Seattle. It seems like him and Geno have really locked in on that chemistry. You found the balance in this game, like the Patriots game. Maybe it was the only other game that was really this way, where you actually found balance between DK and JSN. Seems like they're finding that kind of footing between this trio, so to speak, and Lockett maybe being a bit of the odd man out as his production has kind of dipped a little bit within this. But the good news is that you've kind of found that trio and how to work them and not make it feel like you're forcing things.
Yeah, and I think we all kind of expected this would be the year where Lockett takes a step back. He's getting older. He just doesn't get open consistently. He can still help this team. We give it time. We understand that there are going to be some games where he just isn't there, and that's okay. He's not going to be here next year, I think, almost certainly. But yeah, JSN, I was at a low point with him a couple weeks ago after that play where on third down, he gets open, Geno finds him, the ball bounces off his hands, gets picked off. I was at a low point with him, and ever since that play, he just looks like a completely different player. And I don't know what happened, but he is young. He was 21 years old last year. He's 22 right now. It's not like this guy came into the league at 24 years old.
No, it's not. He is a young guy. It was standing out to me too, Brendan, when I was looking at the PFF scores, because he's slowly starting to rise up into sort of that top 20, top 24-ish of receivers in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And looking at the age of all those guys on PFF, as he's being one of the lower guys, I'd kind of forgotten a little bit about that he indeed is one of your, he's a very young guy. He's not one of those older prospects, because we have so many of them coming out now that are 24, 25 years old, but he's definitely not that. Anything else stand out to you about this game that was of notable that you want to discuss? We got Kobe Bryant played pretty well, I guess, on the other side. Witherspoon obviously had maybe one of his better days.
Ernest Jones was awesome, obviously. I don't know what PFF is doing with him. I don't know. They don't seem to have a great grasp of linebacker play, do they?
They don't. I think that they sometimes struggle on the back end too at times. Safeties are also another one where I think that they don't always understand what they're looking for. But I don't know. I've gone back and watched all 22 quite a bit on this past game and locked in on Jones, because another one that I want to put a video together for him, because he's been so good for us, Brendan. But I don't get where they got to that grade point. What they have him at, like a 48 or something?
Yeah, it was like well below water. He's drowning at 48, and that doesn't seem reflective of reality to me.
No, he's making plays at the line of scrimmage in the run game. He's getting off blocks. I have no idea how they got that point of a grade. And the guys, I did kind of the math on this, Brendan, 3 games. If you put and extrapolate what he's done as far as tackle numbers just in these 3 games, he'd be average over 200 tackles. Not average. He'd have over 200 tackles for a season.
Yeah.
If you extrapolate out. So he's been such a huge addition, but I don't know what PFF saw. I will say there's just those random moments of PFF. I think by and large, their grades are pretty good. But there is throughout the season going to be those times you're looking at a grade on a player and you're going, I don't see how they got to that one. It does happen. It's something that you see on a weekly basis, and you just go, I don't think it means that, Brendan, you should throw out all the grades and then say, well, then these are not worth anything at that point. It always comes back to you just put them in the perspective of balancing off versus what you see with the eye test.
Yeah, and Tyrese Knight as well, who they actually did give a good grade to. I thought he played a good game. That was a game where Tyrese Knight could have gotten destroyed because it's Shanahan and it's that Niners offense doing their misdirection stuff. That's the kind of stuff I was worried about with Knight when he came out of college. It seemed like he would fall for eye candy, and there wasn't really any of that. We stopped the run well, and the Niners didn't have any big plays. They had like one 20-yard play. That's it.
It's true enough. They you limited them big time. 23 games since they've been that low on the passing yardage front of it, Brendan. And a little thing that stood out with McDonald this year, and you take those first 3 games of the year, this game is that he's had some games where when it's really locked in and you've seen kind of the vision, I think, at play, where he's really highly limiting the passing yardage of the opposition. And what did we have those first 3 games? I think you had to go back to 1979 for the Steelers to find a 3-game set to start up the year of as low a passing yards per game as you were averaging. And I think that says something, that we're seeing some of those little flashes here for what we might see on really more of the consistent basis long term when this defense really comes together.
Right. And offensively, one thing that I noticed, and I saw some numbers yesterday, I even made a video about this that really stood out to me. Adjustments on offense, because we talked about the adjustments on defense that McDonald made that seems to have worked over the last 2 games. The adjustments on offense, where the shotgun, we got out of shotgun and we put Geno under center far more than usual in this game. On the season, for the first 9 games, Geno Smith is in the shotgun about 81% of the time, 81. In this game, it was like 67. And it's just one game. I do wonder if maybe this is the adjustment that Grubb is making, trying to get a little bit more out of this offense. And obviously the offense didn't play an amazing game, but I do wonder if getting out of shotgun all the time, because the league as a whole is starting to move towards a little less shotgun and a little more under center. Last year, the league average was like 83. This year, it's more in the low 70s. I wonder if maybe that's an adjustment that he's going to make down the stretch.
I sure would like to see it. I think Geno's got the mobility to work off of the play action, boot action that you can run off of it. And I do think it's going to be better for a guy like Zach Charbonnet, who's been very neutralized out of shotgun, especially on his carries. Walker can do a little bit more of the shotgun stuff, but even he, I think, is very much benefited. I mean, if you look at 2 of his bigger runs in his career, the New Orleans game or the San Diego game, those are all coming out of kind of a gap power, right up the middle off of under center, if I'm not mistaken, and getting those runs. And so I would love to see it, man. Quarterbacks don't tend to like to turn the back. I'm sure Geno would fight against it a little bit, but the shotgun has not allowed you to be necessarily prolific in scoring, and being a little bit more open to those other ideas would be, nice. Even the thing like the fly sweep that you could run, you can't really run that out of shotgun. And if you run it under center, like they did to Jackson on the one play they ran it, where he got actually some yardage, it was effective. So it's just other things kind of open up, I think, from that under center, and would love to see them keep building on that.
Yeah, because like I said, this year, under center is making a little bit of a comeback, and the Seahawks were one of the teams that was resistant to that so far. They've been running shotgun at about the rates consistent with last year's average. And maybe this is the start of them starting to actually follow the trend, because, we talk about this. The league is a constantly moving pendulum where the offense adjusts to what the defense does. The defense adjusts to the adjustment, and then it's on the offense to adjust back. Maybe going a little more under center is part of the adjustment.
Very well could be. And it is an ebb and flow kind of thing. We do know that what we're being told about the way the offenses have gone with the cover 2 shell defenses, Brendan, that it is going back to the running game. And so if that is the case, then if it's going back to the running game, that means more of the full utilization of the running game, not just read option RPO stuff, but actual back to under center stuff, as that starts to grab more of the forefront and then go through it again back into its cycles on that side of it. Is Kobe Bryant our long-term guy there at safety, Brendan? Have we found our potential long-term safety there, or are we still going to probably take a look at that this offseason?
I want to say yes, because I really like Kobe. He brings some stuff to the table that I really like. The ability to force fumbles. That's rare in this league, and that is something that can be really valuable. Like, I think he forced like 5 fumbles as a rookie, and he wasn't even playing full-time. He was a slot corner that year. So I want to have that on the field. At the same time, I understand that safeties are probably something that McDonald really, really values, because in Baltimore, he had a legitimate defensive player of the year candidate in Hamilton. So I don't want to say, okay, we found a couple guys who are good, so we don't have to think about it anymore. So I'm going to be open-minded on that front. I would like the answer to be yes, for sure. But I would understand if he wants to try to find his Kyle Hamilton at safety. I would get it.
Yeah, I think it's possible that he ends up falling in love with the guy, especially it's a big guy that fits to maybe that player model that Kyle is kind of a bigger guy. And boy, he sure does have a nose for the ball, does Kobe. That you talk about the forced fumbles, but has a pick this year. Also has a near pick with the Rams game. Had another near pick in this game on a throw on Purdy. I mean, he just seems to have that nose for the ball and being around the ball and just able to help cause those turnovers. And I think he's going to get a pick. I was calling my shot. I think this week he gets his interception because he's been so close here. I think he comes up and grabs it this week, and I think he's taking steps here, Brendan, to where he's going to solidify himself in that way if he can.
Yeah, as it turns out, sometimes moving players around to a new position every year actually works.
And you give him a couple years at that one position, then like safety, as opposed to moving him to a new position every year. Wow, looks he can actually start to kind of somewhat master it and get good at that position. Not outside corner to slot to safety. It's a little bit less of that, just peeing around a little bit. But he's settling in there and he's playing well. Good tackler too, Brendan. He's tackling well, which is the thing you'd worry about as a corner convert to the safety position. Is can he tackle? Is that holding up? And doing pretty well with that. Seahawks are kind of slowly, I noticed with PFF coming up this year bit by bit better than they've been as a tackling unit in prior years.
Yeah. The Rams game, which was an overtime game, they had 4 missed tackles the whole game.
Yeah, it's gotten better. And certainly Ernest Jones' presence has helped out a ton with that. But Tyrese Knight was good in this game as a tackler. He's been good in that area. And boy, that kid looks really good out on the field. You can sure feel he gives you that different size, doesn't he, Brendan, than what you've had at the other linebackers out there. Like he's got a little bit more oomph to him as far as a player than some of the lighter linebackers we've had come through.
Yeah, and that pick is a great example of just trusting the process working, because when we drafted him, I think a lot of people, yourself included and myself included, were like, yeah, I don't know if I get this, because the tape in college was, first of all, there wasn't a lot because he played at UTEP, right?
That's right.
And what we saw was not great, but we just kind of went, okay, it's Mike McDonald. He likes this linebacker. We're going to go with it. We're going to trust it. And so far, yeah, that's actually paid off. The in Mike I Trust thing seems like it's actually working out.
It really does. It really does. And Mike got to handpick him, of course, to what we've heard on those reports. And he seemed to have picked a good one on this one, as this kid looks like a long-term player. And boy, is it nice this year as you go through where we're looking at having so many holes a couple of weeks ago. If the season can round into, oh, hey, look, right tackle looks like it's getting solidified. Oh, hey, look, center's getting solidified. Hey, we get Ernest Jones on an extension. Tyrese Knight slides into the will. Doesn't prevent you from going and taking another linebacker at that point. But now Kobe Bryant up at safety. We've got some things starting to settle into place for the long term, even beyond this season, and making the offseason not look quite as hard of a road to cross, because there's not going to be as many positions that you have to go address. Is that a fair way of looking at it?
Yeah. And you can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone in some areas, right? Like, there are going to be a lot of offensive linemen you can get in this draft, I think, that are going to be a right tackle and a left guard at the same time. Yeah. So you can go get some guys, maybe even 2 of them, a guy like a Wyatt Millum from West Virginia, who I think is going to be capable at left guard and right tackle. There are going to be some other guys just like that, where you can kind of hedge your bet against Abe Lucas while at the same time taking care of that left guard position. And that's going to be something where you can kind of be very efficient in how you fix the offensive line. You're going to be able to say, hey, we already gave Julian Love all that money. Kobe Bryant's entering a contract year. We might not really need to worry so much about this safety position anymore. Trey Brown is on the outs, clearly. I don't know what it is, but he's done something that the coaching staff doesn't like, because he can't even get on the field anymore.
Well, I think it's Job, isn't it? I mean, it's Job's development more than it's Kobe's.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, Job, now he's a free agent in the offseason, but he's not going to be expensive to keep. Like, you could just decide, okay, these are our cornerbacks next year. We're going to go with Woolen. Even if we have to go ahead and let Woolen play out on the 4th year, then so be it. It's going to be Witherspoon and then Joby, and you've got your 3 guys. You've got Pritchett maybe developing. You've got maybe another developmental guy, but you don't need to make a big investment there. And it's like things are starting to really open up.
They really are. And Job's played really well, Brendan. He's got through that minimum 100 snap count for cornerbacks and just well graded down the line. So it's cool to see he's come forward. And interesting decision that they'll have on him if they are able to bring him back on that low end deal. But you would feel pretty good about the corner room. You have Nehemiah Pritchett still there, then developing behind as well in addition. So you have a little bit of depth there. Again, not to be then pressed this offseason, have to really hammer it as much. But Job's been a very impressive player out there and what he's brought on the table. Well, let's pivot this a little bit more forward, unless there's any other things I might miss you want to cover on that game with the Niners. It is cool to see as well, just as a final note on this, that we maybe turned the corner here. At the same point in time, you take the pulse of that Niner fan base, and it's getting dark. It's getting dark very quickly out there in San Fran.
They're and
firing their coach.
I think it's now justified because of how bad their schedule is the rest of the way. They got to play the Packers, they got to play the Eagles, they got to play the Lions, and even like the Bears are not a pushover. I think that's a team with problems. That is not a terrible team, and they've already lost to some pretty mediocre teams this year. So I actually think they're starting to get a little justified in being doom or gloom. I don't agree with them wanting to fire Shanahan, of course.
That's going to be my next question to you, because I think that thing is absolutely ridiculous that the fan base is even flirting with that as far as a possibility of a solution here. I think it's stupid beyond all measure.
Yeah. I would assume that Shanahan is one of the highest paid coaches in the league. I don't know for sure. I haven't looked at like any kind of a coaching salary list, but he's getting that money regardless of whether or not he's going to work for you. Do you really want to try to enter a bidding war on like a Ben Johnson when you've already got all that money tied up to Shanahan, knowing that there's probably going to be a bunch of teams. There are going to be a bunch of teams looking for a new coach this offseason. You're going to be in a real fight trying to get a good one, right? Because you've got obviously the Jets. They're going to need a new head coach. You've got a team like the Browns might move on from Stefanski. I don't think they should, but they probably will. Sounds like the Giants are going to fire Daboll, or is it Daboll or Double?
Daboll.
Okay, Daboll. There's going to be a lot of openings. I don't think this is the offseason you want to enter into competition. The Bengals are probably going to fire Zach Taylor. The Jaguars are definitely done with Doug Peterson. The Raiders might move off of Pierce. Cowboys done with McCarthy. We know that. Even if we think they're going to get Belichick, that's still another team that is going to be making the rounds. The Bears are going to be done with Eberflus. Saints are going to be looking for somebody new because Dennis Allen's already gone. Like, there are so many teams that need a coach. Even if you wanted to move off of Shanahan, the odds of you landing somebody good, not that high. Especially, like, is that roster really covetable at this point? Because
that's going to be what I was going to say.
So many of their players are old. Like, Kittle is old. Debo is washed up. Ayuk's coming off this massive injury. Trent Williams might retire this offseason. This is an old roster. I don't know if coaches are looking at that and being like, I can't wait to work with Brock Purdy when he doesn't have 7 all-pros on that offense with him.
As we're about to pay him $60 million a year.
Yeah.
At the same time. And I think the same thing. You mentioned Ben Johnson. I go, well, Ben's going to have a bit of the pick of the litter. Why would he want to go to an aging roster like that's got to be turned over, that's got all this dead money that they're facing? It's going to make his job harder. He's going to want to pick the word. To me, I think Jacksonville, for instance, with Ben is the one where he'd go to, where it's like, quarterback's in place. I've got some skill position players to work with, and we'll just build it from here. So I think he's going to go to more of a destination location rather than being put out in, some third world country kind of thing, where the Niners aren't third world country, but just they're heading into a situation. And there's gonna be a lot of tough decisions. And you just laid it out very well as far as what they're facing, which isn't just like 1, 2, 3 big kind of decision things. It's like they've got 10 major decisions this offseason, not the least of which is, like you also say, Trent Williams being maybe a guy who's going to retire after this year. It's a potentiality, especially if he sees that they're not ready to compete anymore, especially if they're going to turn over the coach.
Yeah. Even the Raiders, like, they got the best tight end in the league already, maybe, in Brock Bowers. And they're going to get their quarterback this offseason. And every bit of hype is currently around them getting Shedeur. So if you're a coach prospect that likes Shedeur, and I know some of them do, some of them are going to be on board with that, Yeah, that's going to be another good place to go to. I know that the Raiders have other problems, but you're looking about building around Brock Bowers and Shadur Sanders. That's going to excite somebody.
And you have Brady there as maybe a counterbalance weight for the people that might be freaking out about Harris if a head coach was right and looking at him and going, yeah, but that guy, I don't want to deal with him. And to your point, one other thing on that with the Raiders, number one in cap space for 2026, number 3 in cap space for 2027, and number 3 in cap space for 2025. So they also have something Niners don't on that other side of it, being a big bag of money that they're going to be able to spend to go out there and build that roster up in addition to that. So I agree. You could almost make, I can't believe we're saying this, that maybe the Raiders job is more attractive than the Niner job would be. But I mean, I think there may be something to it. I'm just saying there may be something to that. So,
and the Bears, look at the Bears. They got Caleb, they got running backs, they got those wide receivers. Like,
defense is not horrible.
Yeah, I think their defense is pretty good. I mean, they are a Hail Mary and a blocked field goal away from 6-4. That is not a bad team. It's just a team with a really bad offensive line and probably pretty bad coaching. Probably. I think Eberflus is bad. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he's probably bad.
Yeah. No, I think he's not a good hire there. And they've got an interesting place where if Johnson wants to go there, and we were hearing reports that Ben Johnson wanted to go there last year, but of course the Bears didn't fire their coach. Then it'd be interesting to see the Bears this year if they pivoted away from passing on a guy like Ben Johnson last year because they weren't willing to fire their coach, to then getting stuck with Cliff Kingsbury this year because Ben goes somewhere else. And, they're trying to do some, I mean, to me, that'd be some of the it'd be just low end math on their part. Well, Kingsbury worked with Caleb at USC. So we'll put them together here now. And we'll get the magic of those USC days back. Like, because it was so magical at USC. I mean, he had the one Heisman year, I know, but didn't he have the Heisman year before Kingsbury got there?
Wasn't Kingsbury just there? You might be right. You might be right.
Cliff King had just that final year where he actually kind of, regressed a little bit, if anything, into that final year from the previous year. But to me, that would be a bear move. It's like you passed on a Ben Johnson who would be considered the bright candidate this year, and then you're going to end up going to a Kingsbury who's really, to me, he's a coordinator. Kingsbury, he's showing you that this year with Washington. That's a coordinator guy. Should stay as an OC. Should never be a head coach. Keep him in that role.
Yeah. So yeah, if the Niners want to, I think that the move for the Niners is just fire Lynch. Get a GM in there who's actually going to have personnel control, because apparently Shanahan has a lot of the control right now. Maybe that's not working because their drafts have been, I mean, they hit on some of these late picks. They don't hit on these early picks at all, though.
Yeah. Yeah, they cut 2 third-rounders this year recently, a Sonny Gray and Latu, their tight end. They've had a myriad of first-round picks that have not worked in recent years we can go through. But including Parasol last week, who had no catches, no targets, filling in. But you're right about them they do work, though, third round and onwards, man. They do some work. Both the Rams and the Niners have done so much of a better job than us in recent years of finding value after the third round and really getting some good performance out of those players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if they want to do it, I'm going to be thrilled. If we could get rid of Shanahan and McVay in the same offseason, that'd be great. But, when we had Carroll here, and there were times where I really wanted to move off of Carroll, I would often ask myself, is this something Jody is even thinking about? Is this something that is even crossing her mind? And I would suspect often the answer was no. As it turns out, the answer was yes, because she actually did it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at that Niners situation, and that's a team that makes the NFC title game every year when they're healthy. And I'm thinking, is Jed York even thinking about firing Shanahan? And I feel like the answer is probably no. I think it's just fans being fans and, people talking. I don't think the owner's even considering it. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's a situation where the owner's just like, of course I'm not going to fire this guy. I make the NFC title game 70% of the time with him.
I can't see how you can validate doing it. He just came off of getting into the Super Bowl in a very close Super Bowl game at that. I know there's the whole narrative that he's going to get ahead in games and then lose the lead, and that's something that plagues him. And he's got some brutal stats when it comes to a guy that in maintaining leads in NFL history and one-score games in NFL history. But I just can't go to, well, he's got this Achilles heel in close games. He's just always going to, fail you in the Super Bowl and the big games when it's going to tend to be tight. I think you'd have to still roll with him. And I can't think of any time in NFL history, Brendan, a guy's fired a year after just getting you to the Super Bowl. Say nothing, he's been to multiple Super Bowls, and to your point, multiple conference championships in addition. So it's not just a flash in the pan situation with him.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the same thing that the Eagles probably said with Andy Reid when they fired Andy Reid. And then Andy Reid went on to win 3 Super Bowls somewhere else. Like, I mean, I think a big part of it is just you need to really find your quarterback. And I know Purdy's better than we thought he was going to be. He's still not a great quarterback. I still don't think he's some elite quarterback. I think he's pretty good. I think he's, probably top 15, top 12 even maybe. But to me, if you ever gave Shanahan like a legitimate top 8 quarterback, he'd print Super Bowls. It just hasn't happened yet.
I agree. And it's the part where I wouldn't want to let a guy go if I can't say that I've been able to give him that. And they go, well, what about Trey Lance? What about Trey Lance? Look, quarterbacks miss all the time. It's one of the reasons that you and I don't get as caught up on. It's all about the QB and just get that quarterback, because that's no guaranteed line to go solve your quarterback situation. It still becomes a very much a crap shoot. But I agree with you 100%. You get that guy a legitimate quarterback and not a guy that he has to sort of manage around, and he's going to go get you Super Bowls, which if I'm an Iron fan, that's keeping him here. Then that's data that should tell me that I shouldn't be looking to move off him. I will say we did hear some scuttlebutt about those contracts they set up, Brendan, in the start of the year and how they put those up. I don't know if you looked at their over the cap situation, but base minimum deals 2 years out, 3 years out on certain guys, I think that had the owner a little bit disenfranchised just a little bit in how they did that, especially because they haven't gotten Super Bowls taking that approach. And the future cap situation is looking mighty gnarly right now for them.
Yeah. And to me, if that's the problem, if that's the stitch up, then you should be looking to get a better GM, not fire the coach. Like Shanahan is very, very good at doing head coaching things. Maybe he's not so good at doing the GM stuff. And maybe Lynch isn't helping alleviate that situation.
Agreed. I think that's where he can't have his head in that way. And we saw this in our own place here in Seattle with Holmgren, who had his powers pulled back a little bit, and it was able to benefit the team by getting to a Super Bowl after you took away some of that personnel control. I think coaches just got to coach, man. General managers got to general manage. It's not good to cross the streams. It just really isn't. Really isn't. Well, let me get a couple donos here. We're behind here. First, got a couple of new members to your channel, I believe, on this. We got Ari.
Yeah, that one's on my channel, and this next one's on your channel.
And Chris is on my channel. How do you know by that? Is there the same?
You see the little paperclip icon next to the paperclip means it's on the channel that is the guest. And if there's no little paperclip icon, that means it's on the host, and you're the host this time.
Gotcha. Well, Ari, thank you for becoming a member of Brendan's channel. And Chris, thank you for becoming a member of my channel. Welcome aboard. Thank you for doing that. And appreciate you guys on that. Catch, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, so this offseason, we need to address center, right guard, left guard, linebacker 3, wide receiver 3, and depth stuff. Am I missing something?
Man, it's really, really deflating that we have to worry about right guard when we spent 2 pretty decent picks on right guard in the last 2 drafts, Bradford and Haynes, but maybe, right?
I think you're going to have to, Brendan, and I'm going to be a bit militant about this because I'm going to say I want to take it past that line. I do not want to do the bare minimum thing where we're like, oh, well, this guy will come forward if he hasn't. Oh, that guy, because we picked him here, is certain to come up to here because that's where we picked him. Don't want to make that mistake this offseason because that's where we've gone wrong on the offensive line. I think you really have to, unfortunately, kind of like you say, you have to hammer where you wouldn't like to because you feel like you have addressed these positions a couple times in recent years. But it is what it is. It's been the worst positional group on this team. It's been short sold for years now. That means you got to course correct, and that means you have to do a little bit more, overdo it a little bit to get it fixed, in my opinion.
Yeah, right guard's easy. How do we keep messing this up? God damn it. There are right guards everywhere in this league. Just find one.
Find one, man. There'll be a bunch of them in this offseason, and I just find one that's some decent quality. You don't have to spend all the money on the guy, but put a little bit of, hey, he's been solid every year for the last 5 years. He's going to be even league average. Just getting league average, which you shouldn't have to pay high market prices to go get. We'll upgrade this situation so readily with the way the rest of the line might settle in. If Cross, Lucas hang in there, and they do fine. Oluwatimi, you get these 2 guard positions at just an average place. Even this last week, Brendan, you go back to the scores, and you go, wow. Oluwatimi, Lucas, 2 of your top 3 rated players in this game by PFF. Here we go. And Charles Cross kind of had a rough game, but still around 65. But your two guard positions were two of your lowest rated plays on the stage. Your two of your guard positions are two of the reasons that you had the high pressure rate still under on Geno throughout the course of this game. And it's like, and that's because those are at league worst states. Get them up to just average with those other parts, and that's going to be a great offense, not a great offensive line, but at least be functional.
Geno has the ability to make the offensive line look great because he's making this offensive line look better than it is in most games we play.
Yeah.
It'll be good enough at that point. Linebacker 3, I mean, we need linebacker depth for sure because there's nothing behind the top two guys, but the linebacker 3 doesn't typically play very much. So that's to me part of the depth conversation.
Yeah, I think you can find the linebacker guy more later the rounds catch. You know, you can find that guy 5th, 6th round kind of guy. Even this last draft, there was a myriad of guys, if you looked at them as kind of depth guys, who would have fit to that spot.
And wide receiver 3, I think, is actually kind of a big one too. That I don't want to sleep on that one because this team is going to be a little tight end deficient, I think, next year. They just are. There's not going to be an opportunity to get a great one. And Fant's probably gone. And Pharaoh Brown's probably gone. So I would say that you really need to make sure you nail that third receiver because I think Lockett's gone. And I don't believe his replacement's on the team right now. Like I think Bobo has outed himself as a very, very limited player over the past month or so. And like I like Derek Young, but not in that role. I appreciate Chenault, but he clearly can't play more than a handful of snaps a game, and he may not be here next year anyway. So yeah, I think wide receiver 3 is really, really important to get right.
It is, especially because it is also a guy that's got to probably win on the outside as not a slot guy, but an outside guy where you can slide more of JSN to the inside on that at that point.
Right.
And it's not easier said than done, easier said than found. I'd probably add a couple of little extras on their catch. Tight end might be one that, especially H-back tight end, maybe not your pure inline guy, but we're probably going to move on from Fant. We're going to probably need the move guy who can do some of that. So I would probably add that, and then maybe cornerback 2. Technically speaking, because Witherspoon's your slot. So no Job, no Trey Brown. You're going to probably have to develop a corner as well, rather than just running with just strictly Nehemiah Pritchett going into next season.
Yeah, and don't sleep on edge because right now Draymond's gone next year for sure, right? We agree?
Yeah.
And I don't know what's happening with Nosu. Maybe Nosu is done. So at that point, you've got Mafe, you've got Hall, and you've got nothing. So don't sleep on edge.
And as good as we like these two guys, and I do like Hall and Mafe, they're not ascending to difference makers at the position. Mafe's rounding into having just about the same year that he had last year, which is fine. That's 9-10 sacks a year. That's good run defense. It's a good all-around edge, but that's not a difference maker. And I'll tell you with Derek Hall, a guy that had a really rough year last year in stopping the run, slowly but surely as this year's gone along, his run defending scores and his ability on that side of it has slowly dipped down. And it's gotten me a little bit concerned with him long-term as a player in that way, that maybe this is a guy that can only do really his good stuff as a pass rusher and everything else is a little bit maybe limited.
Yeah, and this is a great draft for edge rushers. The Penn State guy, James Pierce, Michael Williams, and you also have a couple of linebackers that are probably going to be able to do the Micah Parsons thing, right? You've got Jalen Walker, the Georgia guy, and I know he's hurt, but Harold Perkins, if he enters the draft, might be like that.
Yep.
So there's going to be an opportunity to add on there. So I would, if we use our first round pick on an edge rusher, especially like Michael Williams or Jalen Walker, I'm going to be really happy. I'm going to have no problem with that.
No, I won't either. I think you could make the argument too, Brendan, that might be the value guy on your board in the first round. You know, if you find yourself 18, 19-ish, you're in the place of kind of where the Rams were with the Verse guy, where maybe there's an edge or two that have gone at that point, but you're still getting one of the better ones in the draft. Not full blue chip guy, but a really, really nice prospect there at that spot. And as we know, the team's been driven by value lately when they pick there in that first round, especially. So I wouldn't have any issues with that as well. You could see where the value would go as to why that would be the smart choice in that moment. And again, you're going to have to, I think when Nosu's out, you're going to have to round out the depth here. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah. And they're not even talking about Nosu anymore when they talk about injuries, right?
I think he comes back in a couple of weeks. I think he's back within. Yeah. I think that they're being, they're going to give him the time on it, I think, but So I've understood it. It's a couple weeks. I thought McDonald was asked about it the other day, but it might have been in passing and quick. So I'm not positive on that one either.
Yeah. I mean, and even if Nosu comes back and plays well and we decide to keep him, that doesn't mean you don't take an edge if the opportunity's there.
Yeah, you still got to keep reinforcing. And certainly if Nosu, to your point, does come back, that is a 1-year situation.
Yeah.
So, it's not necessarily going to be a long-term beyond just that one season. So, but good list, Catch. Good list. Like it. And thank you for the donation. Airborne 1, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, love your show. Go Cardinals. Well, best of luck to you. It's cool seeing the Cardinal fans invigorated here a little bit by this season. And boy, that'd be an easy team to root for, Airborne, with how hard they play. Me and Brendan are going to talk about this in a second, but they play hard every week. They don't make silly, bad mistakes to hurt themselves in football games. They give themselves a chance by that way. And that's how you want your team to play, no matter how talented you are. Play hard. Don't do stupid mental errors throughout a game, and see if you can pull it out. And they've won a lot of games where they haven't been as talented as the team across from them this year, Airborne, but they wanted it more. Your team wanted it more.
Yeah. A lot of that going around.
Richard Stewardson, thank you for the $5 donation. Can we keep this good run going?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that at the very least, you can say this defense should be able to keep the good run going, because the adjustments they've made seem to have really found a path. The offense, I don't know, because as much as we're excited about the way Lucas and Oluwatimi played this last weekend, it can easily swing back the other way next week or the week after or the week after that, because these guys are such unknowns right now. But I feel good about where the defense is. I'll put it to you that way.
I'm in the same place, Richard. I think that we can certainly keep this run going. I share Brendan's worries a little bit about the offense because it still is not quite found an identity. It's still not able to consistently attack in certain ways. It seems to be kind of still searching and probing through these games this year. But defense does seem to be kind of sliding together. The addition of Ernest Jones has been a godsend out there. Job settled in at the outside corner to help you out with Trey Brown. I think you mentioned about Trey Brown. I think he was struggling a little bit early in this year. I mean, he had some games there where he was giving up his share of catches and touches. And that's partly because when you have Witherspoon and Woolen on the field, you're going to be the guy to get targeted. But Job's held up on that as being that guy that's going to get targeted. So,
it was really just that Giants game. Trey Brown was awful in that game. Other than that, he was fine. But maybe they're just like, look, Trey Brown's not going to be here next year. So let's look at this guy who we like just as much as Trey Brown, who might actually be here next year. Maybe it's that simple.
Could be on that. It's hard to say. I think too, there's an issue there with Trey on tackling a little bit that they maybe don't have as much confidence on with him. That gets him a little bit hesitant. But the thing I noticed too with this, Richard, is that you're slowly here over the last couple of weeks, maybe turning to the point of being at your most healthiest at the end of the year, especially if we do get a Nosu back. And if you're talking about keeping the run going, getting hot at the end of the year, getting healthiest at the end of the year, these are the things that aid a really nice run. And so it's hard to predict, but I would say that if this can keep going in the trend of where it's going on both sides of the ball, and again, offense needs to get some work done here to find some consistency. But if that can happen, then absolutely you can go on this run. You can go take this division. It's going to take a hot run. You're not going to have it given to you. You're not going to be able to just kind of fall into it. You're going to go 7-9 and find your way in, like kind of Carroll did in that first year with in Seattle. It's going to be probably taking 10 wins to get there. But I think, Brendan, if you win in your own division, you win the 3 games in your division, and you win those easy games outside of the division, being the Bears and
the Jets,
and the Jets being the 2 games. I think you get those 5 wins, you're winning the division, I think. Don't you?
Yeah, I think so. The Rams schedule's not bad though. I will say that they could get on a little bit of a roll here. I don't know. I don't know how good I think the Rams are is the thing. They might be a very like they lost to the Dolphins. They beat us in overtime. They went to the wire with the Patriots. That might be a team that is kind of fraudulent, just waiting to get knocked off. I don't know. We'll see.
I'm with you on the Rams. I can't tell. And the thing with the Rams last week, their offense got going. And if their offense gets going, it changes their whole outlook of his team, because the offense has been struggling. The run game's been kind of struggling for them. But if they get that thing rolling like it was kind of rolling last week against the Patriots, with the way their defense has played this year, they're very dangerous. They're very tough. But I think if you beat them, and they have a couple games on their schedule, like the Eagles this week, they lose that game against the Eagles. And they got I think maybe they got the Buffalo Bills still on their schedule too.
Yeah, they haven't played the Bills yet.
So they've got a couple. You're right. There's a couple easy games in there as well with them, but win out, man, on your division. Get a couple of those wins that should be easy on. Yeah, it's on the road against Chicago. Yeah, it's on the road against the Jets, but those are two kind of Phelan type teams this year. Then you're in. You're in at that point.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you, though, Richard. Appreciate you for all of your support here on the channel as always. Seth Kaloa, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, love the collab with you too. Always great insights. Well, we appreciate that, Seth. Thank you for that, man. And thank you for all of your support to the channel. Please do, folks, if you're on Brendan on his side, Seahawks Brendan Nelson here on YouTube, you hit that like button. If you're on the Hawks Nest, hit that like button on my side. Sub on up on both sides if you haven't. It does help out our channels tremendously by doing so, and we really, really do appreciate it. But thank you, Seth.
Thank you, Seth.
We love what we get to do here, man. Well, let's take a look at this matchup of the Cardinals.
All right.
I'd be interested to see just right out the gate before we get to kind of the finer tune details on this game on a big picture standpoint. I walk into this game, Brendan, as sort of when you get to sort of there's complication on breaking down the matchups and a variety of different things that are going back and forth between two teams that will determine the win. But I think in this game, as I look at it, there's also some simplification going on here when it comes to the Cardinals, especially with their ability to attack, where have been throughout the year really vulnerable. And I go to this and watching the Cardinals throughout this year and seeing every one of their games as saying, you've got to come out of this game, stop their run. And as much as anything, if you can limit their run, if James Conner comes out of this game with 14 carries for 53 yards, you're going to get the win, I think. And I don't like to boil everything down to a bottom line stat of that, but I think it's just such a big harbinger for this game, a big part of what will determine this game, whether or not we can keep that ran game from just going crazy.
Have we played a quarterback like Kyler Murray this year, the dual threat quarterback, like Bo Nix, I guess, but that was like he almost never took off and ran in that game.
It's true. Purdy's kind of that way a bit.
Kind of. It doesn't. I don't feel like there's an equivalency between what Kyler can do and what Purdy can do, though. Purdy's more quick than he is fast.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So we haven't played a quarterback like this yet this year, have we? Because Stafford's a statue.
Goff's a statue.
Goff's a statue.
Brissett's a statue.
Yeah, Brissett. I guess Daniel Jones, but he didn't even do that in that game, did he?
Not really. No, he was able to beat you with his arm.
Yeah, and like he might be like you can't really call him a dual threat because his arm is so bad. He's like a one read and then take off quarterback.
Yeah, he's a leg guy with an interesting arm talent.
And Kirk Cousins might be the most immobile quarterback of all time this year.
That's true. It's very true. Yeah, he's lost a lot. That Achilles thing has definitely robbed him of some of his movement in the pocket. Not that he was a movement guy anyway before that, but it's definitely dinged him down considerably. So, yeah, I would say this is, and also to your point on that, I think we don't necessarily have, even as you look at the schedule the rest of the year, Brendan, with some of the matchups that you have still, you're going back and you're going to be playing Stafford at some point. Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold's not the most mobile guy. So this is really one of the only kind of mobile guys you're going to really face for the most part on this year too.
Caleb, right? We get Caleb.
You get Caleb, and he's got a little bit of mobility, but he's also a little more of a improviser. Rather with Kyler, he's a pure, Kyler can be a difference maker with his legs and how he uses them.
So that's interesting, right? That's a dimension that the Seahawks have not had to deal with yet, right? So you're right. If you stop the run, that would go a long way in proving that you've really found something defensively. Oh, Josh Allen. We did play Josh Allen.
We did Josh
Allen. I guess that would be the one, but we didn't really stop Josh Allen. So
no. Another game though, where it's like almost he was doing more what he was doing with his arm and decision making more than it was his. There was a little bit of him using his legs, but I want to say it was, I've seen him use legs much more in other games than ours. Kind of like he didn't have to almost.
Right. So that's definitely an interesting dimension here. That's just one more player you have to be worried about on these running plays. That's one of the first times this year where we're having to play a quarterback where every time he sticks the ball into his running back's gut, you got to be worried about him pulling it back and taking off. And generally speaking, I feel like the Seahawks historically have done well against those quarterbacks, but it's, a new coach, new defensive coordinator, some new personnel. Are they going to be able to keep up? Like we're talking about Ernest Jones, how much we love him, how much we're happy with that trade right now, but he's a slower guy. Is he going to be able to keep up? Tyrese Knight's a quicker guy, but is he going to get tricked by some of this misdirection stuff and let Kyler get the outside on him? He's not as fast as Kyler. So there's definitely some interesting stuff being brought into the picture with having a quarterback like Murray out there, and it's a new challenge for McDonald to try to stop. And you look at our personnel compared to their personnel, it's not the greatest matchup, I feel like.
No, it's a tough one. And the thing with them is they really understand their identity, Brendan, and that they're not going to step outside themselves like they would have when Kingsbury was there, where Kingsbury is going to always have that penchant like some OCs do, where he's going to want to throw the ball and really start peppering around. With this offense, they really will stay with the running game, and they will not step outside themselves just to decide that they got to do something different. If they're getting the 5 yards, the 6 yards on the ground, they'll just keep hammering it and hammering it and hammering it. And then once you bring the resources up with an eighth man in the box to then go, gosh, we can't stop this legitimately straight up. Bam, that's where they start to hit you over the top with the play action and some of the deeper plays down the football field. And it is very, very effective. It's kind of simple ball a little bit offensively at times in the way they run that, but it's very effective because they've got a good running back. They've got the threat of Kyler in the RPO game, like you just talked about, and they've got enough of the receiving core to get down the field to attack you in that way, especially with the Marvin Harrison. So it's really tough because you just can't kind of take anything sort of away from them. You have to play it kind of legitimate. You have to play it sort of straight up where you can't sort of cheat a little bit.
Right. And Trey McBride, I did not think this guy was going to be that good. I did not think this guy was going to be like. Is he a top 5 tight end?
Yeah. No, yeah.
He's got to be.
I don't think he's as much a blocker on that side, but as far as pass catcher goes and after the catch and great hands, yeah, you got to give him a nod on that one.
Yeah, no touchdowns this year, though. Statistical oddity.
They run the ball down damn well, Brennan. When you run the ball, you get down that red zone, you don't need to throw it.
Yeah, actually, they have something in common with the Seahawks on that front, I guess, right? Because the Seahawks pass the ball down the field, and then they get inside the 5, and then they run the ball.
Yeah, it's where that's where you want to be ideally. I think most coaches, offensive wise, will tell you that you throw between the 20s and you run to score a little bit. But yeah, they haven't had to use them a lot down there. They also do a good job with Harrison down by the goal line, fades and stuff like that down there. So they've worked him a little bit when they have one to throw there, where it's just hasn't gone to Trey. But he's a great player, man. Really tough to bring down after the catch as well. And they will lean on him all day long. So, you have flashes of sort of that Hunter Henry game against the Patriots a little bit on if they try to, work him in that way and just really lean on him in attack, especially with Tyrese Knight and Jones there in coverage. That'd be a spot if I'm the Cardinals coming in that I'd look to hammer quite hard in this game as a way to attack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How are you handling Harrison this week? Are you putting Woolen on him? Are you putting Witherspoon on him? Or are you just going to let him move around and live with whoever ends up being there at the snap?
So I would go with Tariq Woolen traveling with Harrison in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would actually put Witherspoon on Trey McBride.
Fun.
Yeah, I would. Because I think that when I look at the Cardinal offense, running game, Marvin Harrison, Kyler, obviously, right? He's in it, but running game, Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride. Now, I put those over here and I look at what's the rest that I got to deal with. Greg Dortch. I got the kid out of Stanford who's okay.
Wilson.
He's okay. Yeah. He's all right. He's all right.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, I'm not really, that doesn't scare me. The rest of the stuff doesn't scare me. If I've got guys out there one-on-one or half and hold up against those guys, they might get some catches here and there, but I've shut down the way that they're going to want to try to lean on and force them into to guys that don't typically help them to win in football games necessarily as much. That's the pathway to me. And having the two guys in Woolen and Witherspoon that are well suited to be able, I think, to lock those kind of guys up with Trey. They'll use him a lot like a slot receiver. So I think it's very natural to just have Witherspoon in there with the alignment in there and then, go roll that route with it, in my opinion, especially if you can run some stack boxes to take away some of the run game at that point. And then you're having them in kind of one-on-one man coverage situations on the outside.
Yeah, because like you said, there's not a lot to be scared of beyond those two guys. So I like that. I don't think you're seeing a lot of traveling from the Seahawks defense so far this year. So I don't know if it's realistic, but I would like to see that. I think it makes sense this week.
Could be a way to attack there. We'll see if McDonald's may be open to do it. It'd also be interesting to see, as we've seen the last couple of weeks, Brendan, more of the Ravens flavor being brought out on the defense with some of the stack boxes, unbalanced fronts. I think he's even blitzed a little bit more the past 2 weeks than he did to start out the season. Mm-hmm. And it will be interesting to see if they keep rolling with that here against Kyler, if his legs maybe cause them to be a little bit more hesitant to being willing to blitz and run those blitzes as much.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier to do those things, the stacked boxes and the blitzes, when you're competent on first and second down, right? That's the thing we've been talking about for a while now. And the last 2 weeks, the early down defense has actually been about average, league average. and that's been enough. And you've seen they've felt a little more liberated to do things like that. In fact, I actually think one of the big plays in that Niners game was the play where we blitzed Witherspoon, and Witherspoon actually hit Purdy's hand as he was throwing it. And a couple people pointed out that Purdy looked like he was in pain the whole rest of that game.
Indeed, he did. Well, and he's on the injury report right now
Yeah.
for the Niners. So, that's definitely seemingly what kind of played down there. And yeah, you're starting to get a little bit of that. Certainly, Stafford had some issues with the prior week as well at times when you blitzed him a little bit. So, I would love to see them continue to be able to do it. Sometimes against those mobile quarterbacks, you don't want to do the blitz game because if you don't get home, he gets out of the pocket, he's gone. You don't have the guys in the back end, and you get to play like you had against the Niners this year, where he was able to run for like 55 yards. But this is where I'd come down to the run game being so important too, Brendan, because stopping the run, like you say, getting to the point where you can run those blitzes into 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, can't do that as much when you get into the 3rd and 4s, the 3rd and 3s. And if you're allowing those 4-yard runs, 5-yard runs on 1st and 2nd down, you're getting those Cardinals into that 3rd and makeable. And that's where I go, yeah, they're going to make those conversions. They've shown that throughout the year. They're going to get up the field if you let them be in that kind of position. Got to get them behind the sticks, got to get to 3rd and long so you can really unleash all of the different iterations of this defense that we have to be able to go at them.
Yeah, because I know Kyler's playing well so far this year. His numbers are good. I still don't think he's a great quarterback, personally.
I don't either. What they've done is they're doing like what Steelers are kind of doing with Wilson, in Pittsburgh, Brendan, which is you're looking to keep him in that magic hour of like 25 to 30 attempts a game. And then he's really effective in that, but that's not high volume Kyler like we saw a couple of years ago. To your point, who's still kind of, to me, if you're asking that guy to be, because you're paying him, he's high volume guy. I think he fails in that kind of environment. Put him in a run-heavy offense where he can just kind of pick his spots. He can be a very good quarterback in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I think most players can be a good quarterback in that situation. When everything is easy for you, yeah, you're going to be good.
And it accentuates your legs a little bit too, right? So then you're able to you work off your read option. When you are dropping back to pass because they're only 25 to 30 times a game, you're able to, now when you use your legs to scramble, it really feels even that much more effective. And they've kind of learned that. And smart on Arizona because there's so much of a pull here, Brendan, to once you pay the guy, now he's got to be a high volume guy. Now you got to, validate having given him all that money rather than what's the best for the team, what's the best for players, what's going to make us the most effective. That doesn't tend to be the question asked.
Right.
Well, let's flip it over here to the defensive side of the ball. Other than just, I want to say on the offense thing with Cardinals, the last part to deal with here is that they do have a line that may be one of the better lines we've had to deal with in full and how they played this year as far as run blocking, pass protecting. It's Paris Johnson's turning into a really good left tackle out there. Froholt has become really good for them. They've got Evan Brown they're rocking at left guard this year, Brendan.
Yeah, he's been good. He's been good.
Yeah, he's holding up there. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze here just a
second. Right. But, that offensive line's no joke. Kyler's been sacked 15 times in 10 games this year.
Yeah, they've held up well. And part of that is, of course, teams having to play the run so much that when they go to the pass, you're sort of being a bit hesitant getting after him as a passer because you got to be sure that they're not actually running the football. When we look at this offense going up against this Cardinal defense, to me, it feels a little bit of shades of the Falcon game as far as looking for an equivalency of a type of defense that we've gone up against. This is a defense that plays really hard. They tackle well. They will be willing to take risks and drive some blitzes at you. But to me, it's a bit like the Falcon game where you are not going to have to be facing as tough a pass rush as you've had to deal with at times. You're going to be able to run the ball in this team. There's going to be holes that your line's going to be able to create. This offense should be able to make some headway against this defense, should it not?
Yeah, although unlike the Falcons defense, this Cardinals defense has been pretty decent so far this year. They give up about 22 points a game, which surprises me because I was looking at that defense before the season started and I was like, there isn't a lot of talent here that I'm impressed by, right? This is a defense. They got Budda Baker. And then after that, I was kind of like, these are just a bunch of Jags for the most part. And Budda Baker at that point was getting old. I didn't know if he had that much left in the tank, but maybe Gannon's actually proving his mettle here. Maybe Gannon's actually a pretty good coach. He's getting the best out of these guys. But I still look at them and I go, I don't see a lot of stuff that I'm afraid of on this defense. Zaven Collins is having an okay year, but to me, he's still a big disappointment from what he was supposed to be when they took him in the first round. Excuse me. Dennis Gardeck is out for the season, right? So that was one of their top pass rushers. He's out, I think. I
That's
think
right.
he tore his ACL.
He is.
Owen,
BJ Ojulari.
yeah, BJ Ojulari. Owen Popoe has not developed at all. He doesn't really do all that much for them. Yeah, there isn't really a lot here. I'm looking at their defensive roster right now, and it's just kind of like, I don't know how this unit is only allowing 22 points a game, but shout out to Gannon for getting the best out of this crew.
Well, they've got a couple. I mean, they're certainly an impressive performance when you look at like keeping the Rams to 10 points, keeping the Lions to 20 points. But when you do look at their schedule, Brendan, you also see teams out there that are a bit offensively stagnant. Jets offensively stagnant this year. Bears offensively stagnant this year. Chargers, they're playing the old school ground and pound game, but they're very much kind of offensively stagnant in the way that they play it. And so they have been able to kind of on some of those games that lowers down their overall points per game, feast on some of the bad offenses to make that look that way a little bit. I don't think that their defense performative wise matches up quite to that 22 points a game because they don't take the ball over. They're not going to rush the pass particularly well. You can run on them and get downhill on them. They fight hard and they're not going to make it easy on you. But that's where I think that that's just a little bit of a mirage versus what they really are as a defense. And Ojulari, I mentioned on that one, that was, Ojulari was going to be your number one pass rusher for the Cardinals out for the year. Gardeck, like you mentioned, filled in. He's been out. They haven't had Darius Robinson out. He's going to get the first round pick for them is going to be playing his first action this game, probably on a sample size of snaps because I would imagine you're going to run him out there the first game, 50 snaps. He's a good player, but it has left them light. They've made the trade for Baron Browning from the Broncos at the trade deadline to reinforce the ranks there just because it was so kind of porous. I mean, hell, LJ Collier starting for them on the defensive line. You got LJ Collier on their defensive line starting. You got Evan Brown on their starting left guard.
DJ Dallas.
DJ Dallas is as sort of the kick returner. So yeah, I think you can get after this defense even with where they've technically been at it. And Budda Baker's been awesome, man. I mean, he's looked like for them what we thought Jamal Adams was going to look like for us.
Basically, yeah. Yeah, they don't get a lot of pressure. They've got 24 sacks on the season, so they average a little more than a sack and a half a game. They don't take the ball away. They've got 5 interceptions total on the season. It's an impressive performance so far, but it also feels a little bit like a paper tiger, right? It kind of feels like if they run into a string of good offenses, they're going to get exposed. And I'm not saying the Seahawks offense is good yet. We don't know yet. I'm not saying that this is the offense that exposes them. But I am looking at it, and, you're right. They gave up 42 points to Washington, right? And I remember watching most of that game. Washington was just moving up and down the field on them like it was some kind of Madden sim. So, yeah, I'm not convinced. I'm not completely buying this. I will say they've got momentum. They've allowed 15 total points over the last 2 games.
And what is the Washington offense, Brennan? What is Cliff Kingsbury's background? What's his offense called?
No, air raid.
And what's Ryan Grubbs?
Yeah, that's exciting, right? We like that.
Well, you go. Maybe you got the same plan of attacks to look at that Kingsbury offense and how they attack this team, and go, hey, we run the same offensive structure of plays in our air raid system too. We can attack those same things that Washington did on this defense and take advantage of in the same way. And I think that the losses they've had that have been sometimes the bad losses this year that stand out for the Packer game or the Commander game there, Brendan, this is a team that wants to keep themselves in the game / play from the lead. They're not a team to play from behind. At home, as we've seen with the Hawk team at times in a couple of games that they've had this year, and getting up on teams and then just kind of stepping on them, like a little bit like the Bronco game. You can do that to this Cardinal team and now force them away from being able to lean on the run as much, force them to have to get pass happy now. And then you can almost sort of take the running game with them by how effective your offense is, as opposed to just by how well your defense is stopping the run. It's a pathway to getting the win in this game. And one of those ones where you can't win the fourth quarter. Well, you can win this one in the first quarter if you can get out into a lead. Can you not?
Yeah, I think that's probably the recipe in a lot of football games in general right now. But especially in this one, you're right. This team does not have an abundance of great receivers that they can lean on to make a big comeback. Kyler, like you said, is somebody who's averaging about 27 passing attempts a game. If you got him up to 40, you would probably see some of the bad Kyler stuff start to come out that has really been suppressed so far this year. The question is, as always, is this offensive line going to allow for this team to put up those big offensive numbers that gets them to the point where Kyler has to throw the ball every snap?
I think you've got the playmakers on the outside to get it done. You got the backs you can utilize on the side, and the offensive line is not going to be as challenged as they've been in prior weeks. And the thing we've seen with Geno is that the statistics on him having a clean pocket, operating from a clean pocket, as infrequent as that has happened this year, is that he's been tremendous when you've given him that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's why I think you saw that Falcon game, him playing so well in that game, and that was one of those games where you gave him that consistency there in that pocket to work with. And not to mention, there's the cumulative on this, Brendan, where I talk about the cumulative on a guy like Geno, where it's like 2 years of bad line play, and you start to see him making unforced errors, or start to see him have things happen to him that wouldn't be normally what you saw a year and a half prior when he was first starting, because it's the accumulation of those hits adding up. There's the good side of this to the other part of it as well, though, where if those hits start to be reduced over the course of a couple games, he starts getting more comfortable in the pocket. He starts to feel like he can trust that offensive line a little bit more, and now he's more within himself and how he's playing the position.
Yeah, and like we were just saying, this Cardinals team does not have one good pass rusher, really. Their leading pass rusher so far this year is probably Dante Stills. Like, if you look at it, Dante Stills, their guy who was supposed to be like their big-time pass rushers, Dennis Gardeck, and he's out.
Ojulari.
So, yeah, and Ojulari. Okay, yeah, Ojulari, you'd put him in there too. Like, they don't have that Bosa guy. They don't have that Hutchinson guy. They don't have... these are the guys who have really just absolutely destroyed us so far this year. They don't have anybody like that. They have a couple guys that are kind of sort of okay. Like I said, Dante Stills actually leads the team in sacks so far this year at 3.5, which is kind of wild.
The fact they've gotten this team as good as they have with missing that pass rush, and it's not, it seems like maybe shade, but it's not. It's just to say your coaching has done so well. Those players have done such a good job of playing to the height of their powers, of whatever their talent has to give on the field. They squeeze out every bit of that. And there's a lot of times we've seen with our team at times the talent as they've been in recent years where we go, man, I don't think we're always playing up to our level of talent. And the Cardinals are going past where their level of talent is. This should have taken them another year, especially with where that defense is at, as light as it is talent-wise, to get them to this kind of state of performance. But it speaks to the job Gannon's done. It speaks to how hard that team plays every week that they've gotten this performance from the squad.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that where they are right now, there's been some very good fortune with them being in the position they're in right now, because you look at earlier in the season, they've got wins against the Niners. That was the game where Jake Moody got hurt. If Moody doesn't get hurt, Niners almost certainly win that game, because they couldn't kick at all as that game went down the wire, and that game was a 1-point game. And then they have the Chargers game where they kick a field goal at the buzzer to win, and then they have the Dolphins game where they kick a field goal at the end to win. Like, those are 3 games that really were just on the edge of a knife. And if they lose even one of those games, I think they kind of just curl up at this point. They're probably just kind of mentally out of it, because at that point they would have been like, what, 2-5 or something? And mentally, I think you just kind of fall out of it. But those 3 results all go their way. And by the way, those games I just talked about are sandwiched in between them getting completely blown out by the Commanders and the Packers. And then they kind of start to believe in themselves a little bit going into these last 2 games where they've won in a blowout. But that doesn't necessarily make them a great team. That just makes them a team that is kind of feeling themselves a little bit, because they were able to get a couple of really, really close games to go their way by, more than anything, I'd say, good fortune.
And they're catching probably to your point on this with the Bears and Jets the past 2 weeks. They're catching those 2 franchises in their worst states of the season at that time, and where they're getting to play them in those kind of blowouts, where those teams were definitely just, the train slid off the tracks, and those teams in their season, they were pretty much put a fork in them at that point. So yeah, I don't think that they're necessarily super strong here, or necessarily the record matches. They've had a really tough early part of the schedule, Brendan, and what does stand out to me about that is that they weathered that early tough schedule. They took the Bills on the road to within a touchdown. They had that Lions team that completely blew the doors off of us to within a touchdown in that game. They fought pretty hard in some of these games as well to just be able to stay into them. But this is a team that at home you can still take advantage of, that you're still more talented than. And if some of the things that have been a little bit leaky on this team, like that line, like the run defense, can shore up just a little bit, even not have to be dominant, but just shore up a little bit, I think you come out of the other side of this with the win.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. I feel like if we play our game, it'll take care of itself. I'm look, the Cardinals deserve a lot of credit. They've won 4 in a row. They're feeling themselves. but I don't view them as being some kind of a juggernaut. I just because they've won 2 straight games in kind of blowout fashion.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Stewartson, thank you for another $2 donation. He says the playoffs looking very close for us Hawks. We got it in eyesight. You know, we can see it's right up the road there. If we can just sprint our way up that road, Richard, and you know, you got to get 5 wins. That's what you got to get through going through. You've used up kind of most of your room for error here. It's going to take you, but there's 5 winnable games that are on your schedule. Rams, Cardinals, 2 games against the Bears and the Jets. Those are all, to me, winnable games here. So, you know, you can go take it. How much does this team want it? How hungry are they to get it this year? Can they see it? You know, we're going to learn a little bit about them in that way.
And honestly, I think the Vikings have been a different team without Darisaw. I think that they are clearly vulnerable, and they're like barely scraping by against Jacksonville, and they're just barely surviving these games. To me, that is a game that you're looking at and going, okay, it's not going to be easy, but you can win that game.
Certainly.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the Packers don't look great. They needed a blocked field goal to beat the Bears.
That's right. And it is I think both those games are at home. Is the Vikings
not
at home?
that really helps you anymore, but yes, you're right.
I know, and we haven't exactly been, you know, great at home, but better than at least maybe the road on that one. On that,
especially Green Bay. You don't want to go into Green Bay.
Not in winter. Not in winter. I mean, and they've got. I think that's the thing of the Niners. This Niners season is on the line right now, Brendan. With you never like our season's on the line to stay alive, and we got to go into Green Bay and get the dub. Like, you know what I mean? Like, ouch. Ouch. Seth K. Aloha, thank you for another donation as well. Appreciate the double donos, bro. He says, this might be an explosive game for Geno. Their pass rush being bad, Geno can have a clean pocket, and Geno is as accurate as anyone with a clean pocket.
Yeah. I mean, we have gotten to the point where whenever I see Geno actually have time to set and throw, I feel like something good is going to happen. I just implicitly trust it.
I do. And that goes to, again, the statistics where they can track quarterbacks in a clean pocket versus a muddied pocket and how they play versus they don't play. And Geno's been really good when you've given him that clean pocket set. And that's where I do go to, you know, we're kind of thinking of like on this, where I look at it like that Atlanta game where when you gave him that time, when he wasn't inundated with pass rush, when you could get a little bit of a running game going, so you could maintain some balance over the course of the game, move the chains, control the clock. That's where you found Geno maybe as much as effective as he's been throughout the whole year. And I think this is a game well set up for himself to go out there and be able to really eat your receivers on the outside. Garrett Williams for the Cardinals has been a pretty good player for them, and he's come along all right. But Max Melton has been as raw as me and Brendan thought he was going to be coming out of Rutgers. Really talented, really athletic kid, but he's not refined. He's not ready really to go out there and be the guy there for him yet. And Murphy Bunting is a guy that's just kind of out there because they know how raw Max Melton is going to be behind him. And so you got some guys that you can attack out there in coverage against their guys. You should be able to win one-on-one. I mean, even Lockett, then at that point is the third, you know, receiver on how he's dealing with. There should be some holes to go after in this defense in that secondary. Yeah.
I know some Cardinals fans really like Garrett Williams. They hype him up a little bit, but I don't see anything special.
Yeah, I don't either. You go, well, him on DK, I still feel like DK is going to get the better of him throughout the course of the game. He'll give sometimes, but you're going to get your catches on them. And you can certainly at least attack the other cornerback spot.
Yeah, none of those guys are as good as Lenore for the 49ers, right?
No. and he'll let you know how good he is. He's boy, that guy, he went from a guy like I was kind of barely aware of to this guy just, you know, it's like, oh my God, you're not that good to be, you know, claiming yourself like that. I know he got paid and all that, but holy hell.
You talk about getting paid big time.
Yeah. But you talk about getting insufferable fast with that guy. But good that we gave it to, you've seen some of the videos. We gave it to him through the game. The guys throwing him around, him, you know, getting beaten coverage, him not making a tackle. It was good.
Yeah.
Good game on that side. But thank you, Seth. Great thoughts on your part. And I agree, man. You give him the clean pocket in this game. I have no doubts we're coming out with the win. If you can keep it to where he's able to sit back there and just sling it and let it rip, then we're getting that dub.
Is this the week where we find a running game? That would be my next question. Because I'll tell you, it doesn't seem like it's possible. It just doesn't seem like we can do it. It doesn't matter who we're playing. It doesn't matter what kind of players they have, how they play defensively. We can't find the running game. Is this the week? What do you think?
Yeah, I think we do, but that's as much just because of how bad they are at stopping the run than it is how good we are at locking in. Olu and Lucas's presence help a bit with this, but you're right. It's been inconsistent across the board. And it's like whenever you do a running play, there's always one or two guys that just completely blow their assignment, even when you block it right. First play of the game last week, Olu takes the nose tackle and dirts him up in the backfield. Lucas comes off the block, lays a combo block on Bradford's guy, completely helps Bradford, helps out Bradford. No, I'm sorry. Bradford helps out Lucas initially on the play and then climbs down to the second level. Lucas gets his guy neutralized. Olutuimi gets his guy dirted up. Bradford's got to get down to the second level, and the linebacker, Devondre Campbell, completely whiffs. Mm-hmm. And when you watch the tape, it's that type of stuff all the time where it's a guy that like doesn't really not execute his block. There's penetration. I didn't even get a hand on him. And so he just completely destroys the whole play. And that's where you get Walker reversing course and coming all the way back across the field. And it's always somebody completely blowing their assignment on the play in the running game, which completely throws this into just crap show every single time.
Yeah. But do you have faith that's going to get better?
I do, because there was a point in the Lions game against the Cardinals, Brendan, where they just decided we're just going to run this ball constantly because the Cardinals can't stop it. We're just going to just keep going. And that's why it was 20-13. It was, yes, close because of the Cardinals keeping it close, but it was also because the Lions were like, they can't stop the run. We'll just run this all day. We'll just keep going. We'll just keep going and going and going and going. And it worked. And I think that, you can do some similar stuff here with this where you're going to be able to create some holes. LJ Collier is not going to be strong at the point of attack. I've learned enough about LJ Collier to know that is the truth. And somebody was in my chat the other night like, well, he's actually rounded in a pretty decent season for them. He's he's leading them in pressures. I go, that speaks more to how bad their pass rush is than it is how good LJ Collier's necessarily been playing. So, he's not been good. You can get after this defensive line. You can definitely get downhill in the running attack and attack them in a variety of different ways. So, I think you're going to find effectiveness in this game. I think Walker goes for probably over 100 or near 100 in this one.
That'd be nice.
That would be nice. Well, I'd love to see him get going. And boy, Sharpenet has had a rough year here, has he not?
Yeah, people are hating on him, and I kind of get it, but it is so unfair for him. He has no chance. Like Walker can overcome some of this run blocking stuff, but Sharpenet really can't, man.
Have we been? We talked a bit about this. These two backs taken in the second round in the prior 2 years. And this has been a little bit of like a science experiment for Schneider on this, Brendan, because he's going so counter to the analytic folks with this, right? Don't take the running backs if you don't have the line. You're not going to get the most out of them in the second round if you take them back to back like that. Your point on Walker is a salient one that he can create where Charbonnet can. I think that's valid when it comes to Charbonnet. But doesn't this also prove with what we've seen over the last couple of years with these two backs and taking them in the second round that it more proves the analytic rule of thumb than it disproves it, like John Schneider was trying to do by selecting these two guys in the second round?
Well, I think if the offensive line was in place ahead of time, it would have been okay. But
that's what the analytics. That's what the analytics say though. They say you got a great back, so I got a difference maker back. Then I need to have the line in place to really get the most out of that guy to go out there and put you a 1,700 yard season, right? Mm-hmm. They've got to be that. And if you don't have that, but you have the great back, he's not going to be able to be tremendously effective in that way. He won't overcome those guys. Kind of like how people will think a quarterback will be able to, at times, who can, if it's a superstar quarterback, can maybe overcome a little bit of a porous line to be able to be a superhero back there. But that's kind of what I think with this is that this proves it in that way that you didn't have your line in place. You thought the difference maker back could overcome that, and the two difference maker backs could overcome that, but they haven't been. Right. Do you agree with it? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it was always. I remember reading the Inside the Draft Room, the Draft War Room article that was written right after the 2023 draft. And according to that article, the reason why they took Charbonnet is they thought he was the best player available. They didn't go beyond that. They just thought he was the best player left. So I don't know if it was a science experiment in the way that you're talking about, where they were like, okay, let's see if running backs can overcome this bad offensive line. Maybe they just circumstantially thought this is the best player we have on the board. And a lot of people would say he wasn't the best player on the board, but that's how subjectivity works.
Yeah, and I can understand where they go with the best board thing. I think that the thing is though that they don't have the line in place to take advantage of those guys is where, to me, the part that has to overrule that pick a little bit, where you say, well, we get this guy, but the line's not in place to be able to really get the most out of this guy. We've already seen a little bit with Walker here in his early time here, where we haven't had that blocking in play. where that's got to be the thing. And I say this, Brendan, because it's about pushing this conversation forward more than it's about looking back and shaking the finger at the Charbonnet pick. It's more about, okay, John, the lessons you learn from this as you go forward are, I can't do that again. Even if the guy is the top guy on my board, I need to understand that the drop off to a 4th, 5th round running back, first looking to target a different position there, even if it's not the high value guy on your board, is a better route to go there, because Charbonnet is not going to be enough of a difference maker over the top of that 4th, 5th round guy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm inclined to agree with that. I don't get me wrong. I do agree with that. But one thing I would push back on is some of the fan base now thinking that Charbonnet is just a bad player. He's not a bad player.
No, it's just that he needs the hole created for him. And that's okay. It's not like you said, it's not a black mark on him. Walker's the better back. Walker's a top 3 PFF back in this league right now. He's the highest rated player in your Seattle Seahawks by PFF as far as his ranking at his position of anybody on this team. So Walker's a far and away kind of difference maker. And it's because he's not that, you can't put that comparison. I agree with you 100% there. And he's still a guy with a lot of talent, good 3rd down back overall, I think, for the most part. But he needs his holes created for him. He needs the space created for him to go out there and be effective. And then he's a guy to me, Brendan, who you give him a 6-yard hole, he'll go get you 10, 11 yards maybe.
Yeah.
When you get him that, then that's where you start to feel his true effectiveness as a player.
Right. Yeah. We're trying to use him sometimes as a short yardage back. He's not a short yardage back.
No. That's not his game. Just never has been a game, even going back even to college, in my opinion, for the most part.
Right.
Go ahead.
So yeah, speaking of the running game though, so one thing that kind of is interesting that happened in this game is that Geno at the end of this game starts using his legs. I know he probably doesn't want to do it very much because he's old and he can't afford to get hurt. If Geno gets hurt, things are really going to fall, the wheels are really going to fall off the wagon.
Oh yeah.
But is that something that you think we need to see a little bit more of as the season winds down?
Yeah, I think that you've got to, when you have an offense that's inconsistent, and which, especially when the running game's not working, and you're going to have to sometimes get way too more pass happy than you'd like to get because of that, then you've got to be able to manufacture things. You can't just drop back to throw and be like, well, we're just going to wing it around the field here and make it happen. This is where you build in those tunnel screens that have worked so well for our offense, Brendan, where it's now not about the quarterback going through reads. We're manufacturing some touches, throws to the flat to the running back, trick plays, misdirection. And yes, Geno using his legs at times, even in somewhat of a purposeful approach. I think that's a smart way to go, where you're just sort of diversifying up your offense. You're making it less able for you to peg it down. And that's a little bit of what we thought we were getting here with Grubb overall, is an offense where you can't defensively just kind of get locked into one thing. But he's got good legs. He can use that stuff. And I think you're on the button with this and saying he doesn't want to kind of do it. And that's kind of the key to this, is that I think that there's moments there with Geno back there where he wants to. And quarterbacks have a tendency to do this anyway, right? Even Russ would do this with his legs at times, where I want to throw. I want to get it. Hey, there's a 8-yard play right there. Take the 8-yard play. Get down, take the yard, run out. Just, it's right there. Go grab it. So, there's that tendency in quarterbacks, I think, to try to steer away from that. And he's got to fight that a little bit. He doesn't have to go run heavy, but just like he did in this game, even hell, just save it for your 2 minutes, or save it for your, end of game situations even, but bring it out then in full if you can and get the opportunity, because defenses are not expecting you to run. And sure as hell that there's no spy out there on this guy.
Yeah. And I feel like that might be the recipe in short yardage, because we've become such a bad short yardage team. Maybe Geno keeping it is the solution to us grinding out some of these 3rd and 1s, 3rd and inches, 4th and inches type situations.
He's been good in those keeper kind of moments too. When you've asked him to just kind of do the sort of Tom Brady dive forward thing, he's been pretty decent at it overall with it. But yeah, I think you've got to find your ways to be willing to use his legs at times. We saw last week, it can be very effective. Teams aren't expecting it. And especially I think because the word is out with him not being a scrambling guy, right? Where they look at him and they go, well, he's not going to move around to some of these quarterbacks in this modern era. And what that does lead then to, Brendan, is that you get the pass rush then kind of going crazy and wild at him. And now what happens with those guys when they're going wild and crazy is that they can sometimes get flying far past the quarterback. And like we saw in that game, that's where those holes open up for Geno to climb the pocket and then go take those yards. But when you have like the mobile quarterback, like we have against Murray this week, you get more of the mush rush. So you get more of that just slowly trying to close the pocket thing down, which doesn't give you those holes to leave the pocket if you're a quarterback. So that's part of also, I think, where it is opened up for him to take advantage of that stuff.
Yeah, so that's something that's going to be interesting to see how much we lean on that now, because he's actually our second leading rusher now on the
Yeah.
season. So I hope he embraces it a little bit. I know he's old. I know he wants to get paid. Oh, did we freeze up here? Are we
No,
okay?
we're
Okay.
okay.
Okay,
No, we're
cool.
good.
But it's part of the recipe for this team to actually win down the stretch, I think.
I do too. You got to go and win 5 games here down this last line. You got like a one-loss thing that you can basically happen, and maybe you can lose 2, and there's some way to still slide in. But if you really want more of a guaranteed path to get in the playoffs, this is what's going to happen, and that means we've got to use all weapons we have at our disposal. And as you say, second leading rusher. There's been times this year, I think that we had the one game where he busted off the 40, 50-yard run. You got to use everything. It's going to take all of the torpedoes to get this to the end of the season and get in the playoffs with kind of how you've set the stage and put yourself behind the 8 ball a little bit with some of the bad losses that you've had this year a little bit. So I'm with you, man. I think it's a great point, and lean on it, Geno, a little bit. You don't have to go crazy with it, but 3-4 times a game, find those moments where you can use those legs. It would be huge.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, anything else kind of worth notable here from the offensive side of the ball from your perspective going up against this defense that you'd like to see or that you think is going to be a key on coming away with a win on this one?
On the defense, you said?
Yeah.
It's so interesting because this team is so different from the way it was under Kingsbury. And under Kingsbury, you'd have 4 receiver sets all day, and you'd have like 4 or 5 different receivers that could get you. It's so different now. But I can't think of anything that really stands out in terms of what I want to see. I just want to see an all-around solid game. I just want to see the things that we've done over the last 2 weeks where the defense has played really well. I just want to see those things continue. I don't think we need any one person to be a hero. I don't think we need any one player to put the defense on his back. Obviously, maybe you look at a guy like an Ernest Jones who has completely transformed this run defense. Maybe you look at that. But I'm not looking for any one person to be a hero. I think if you play your game and you execute, you're going to get it done, and you're going to give yourself a great chance to win.
I agree with you on that too, as well. It's stick, as you say, with what you've done recently. Stay on stopping the run. Stay with Ernest Jones' impact there. Get him one-dimensional. Get him into third longs. Work some of the magic. You can work with Mike McDonald's scheme on those third downs with some of the simulated pressures and whatnot offensively. Find some balance here, and you should be able to get some points put up on the board against this Arizona team, even at home. I know we struggled a little bit at home recently, but they're not going to take over our stadium like some of the other fans have had. So
yeah, and Seahawks fans, go to this game. This game's a big game. Go to this game, please.
I echo Brenna's sentiment on this. This team needs our help right now. We've lost partly these games at home in recent weeks because of the fact we've had our stadium taken over by the opposition's fans. Let's get out there. Let's give them the full throat of our voice and give them that opportunity to go on this stretch run, because this would be a hell of a great, it's already probably going to be a successful season when it's all said and done, with McDonald sort of showing his mettle and what he can bring. But getting to the playoffs, I mean, that'd just be a huge, huge feather in the cap on thinking we're closer, rather than further away, rather than thinking, oh no, it's more rebuildish than it is. No, it's more of a reload thing into the offseason as opposed to that on the other side of it. So it'd be very cool, but let's get this dominance back at home. Let's regain this factor. So be loud if you're in that stadium. No sitting on your hands, no stuffing your face with popcorn. I want you loud on third down. I want you loud when they're in the huddle offensively, the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Well, give me a final breakdown on score here for this game. How do you see this playing out for your Hawks? How's this one going to shake out?
Let's go. I'm gonna say 27-20.
Oh,
Seahawks.
I like it. I'm going to go 27-24, Brendan. I think we get a last-minute drive with Geno and a field goal of Jason Myers to get you the win at the end. But I think we do just enough, man. I think we do just enough. I think this team can see right now what they've got a possibility of grabbing this year. They're feeling the good vibes a little bit more now as the year's gone along. McDonald's made his adjustments, which you were talking about earlier. Look very smart, especially in regards to the linebacker position. I mean, this is working out right now, but those moves initially were like, oh, but you're leading your main tackler, Joe Jerome Baker. But he's been on the smart end of it. He's seemingly seeing this pretty clearly as the situation and what kind of needs to be done on that. Very encouraging. And I feel like the team is going to turn this thing to a good spot by the end of the season, finish off strong. Whether we get the playoffs or not, I feel like we are going to finish off strong, which is exactly what we hoped at the start of the year, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I think that I don't know. I feel better about this game than I probably should, but I just look at the matchup and I feel comfortable with it.
I do too. And it's also a little bit just that while the Cardinals have been competitive against us last few years, Brendan, it does seem like we've had just the bigger problems a little bit with the McVays and the Shanahans and the Rams and the Niners than it is this team. It's been a bit more split, it feels like. So a little bit more of a chance to make some inroads there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, folks, do me this favor. If you're on Seahawks Brendan Nelson's side, get subbed on up to him and maybe subbed up here to the Hawks Nest too. If you're on Brendan Nelson's side, if you're on the Hawks Nest side, sub on up over there to Seahawks Brendan Nelson here on YouTube. Does multiple videos at times, daily content, that type of thing here. Of course, we do our Thursday show every week here, the BNB show. I thank you, Brendan, for coming on in here today.
Thank you for having me on, man. It's fun to do this every week, and we can't wait to do it again next week.
Well, let's go get this win, Seahawks fans. If you're in that stadium, get as loud as hell. Get this team cheered on to getting this dub, because this thing could be so big if you can get this dub. You get the win against the Cardinals. Just get this momentum and this ball just rolling faster and faster and faster. And let's go take this division. Let's go shock the NFC West. Go shock the nation. They had us buried 6 feet under a few weeks ago, but we, like the zombies crawling out of the grave, just scratched through the coffin, through the dirt, through the grass, and we're just starting to pull ourselves up, our head now up out of the grave here. So let's keep pulling it out here, Seahawks fans. Let's get this dub, be loud in that stadium, and let's see what happens the rest of the year.
Yeah, I like it. I think we're gonna get it, guys. I think we're gonna keep this season alive for at least one more week, and then see what happens. See what happens against the Jets.
Well, hit that like button out the door for good vibes and to just get the guaranteed win this week. It's the like button that'll get you the guaranteed Hawk win. I tell you, I know it true. Thank you for watching today, folks. We will be back very soon. But until that time, especially with a big game like this, don't you ever forget, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.